Klarna didn't just disrupt consumer finance, they may have accidentally exposed one of the most brilliant cons in startup history.
Insufficient funds, you ain't got no money. Woo.
Was this always a house of cards, or did they stumble into something that actually works? Because while half the internet is convinced Klarna is about to collapse,
Klarna is pretty much going bankrupt because no one is paying them back.
the other half is pointing to their 100 million users and saying, but wait, look at these numbers. So, which is it? Are we witnessing the slow motion crash of a predatory lending scheme dressed up as an innovation, or watching a company that figured out how to make money off our collective inability to just not buy stuff? Let's dive into the most confusing success story in fintech, where the line between revolutionary and completely insane is thinner than your last paycheck. Let's talk about BNPL. Actually, spoiler alert, it's not what you think. Okay, real time. Before we get into the absolute chaos that is Klarna business model, we need to address the elephant in the room. BNPL isn't some groundbreaking innovation that's going to revolutionize how we think about money. It's literally just a financing with a prettier app and a better marketing. Think about it. We've been doing this dance forever. Credit cards, car loans, mortgages, it's all the same concept. Hey, you want this thing you can't afford? We'll spot you cash, just pay us back later, with interest of course. But here's where things get interesting sometimes. Financing actually makes sense. Like, if you need a car to get to a job that pays $900 more per month, and the car payment is only $400, even if you go crazy and get heated seats, that's just the basic math working in your favor. Houses, same deal, you're building equity while having a place to live. Credit cards are where things get murky. Sure, they can be predatory traps that ruin people's lives, but at least they operate with some rules. Fixed interest, credit card checks, limits on how much rope they'll give you to hang yourself with. But Klarna, oh boy. Klarna looked at the credit card industry and said, hold my Swedish fish and watch this.
I'm not gonna eat any Swedish fish unless it's actual Swedish fish.
Where Klarna went full send into madness, this is where our story takes a turn from questionable business practices to, are you absolutely kidding me right now? While traditional credit companies are out here doing their homework, checking your credit score, making sure other lenders knows what's up, trying to prevent you from drowning into debt, Klarna basically said, nah, that sounds like work, and decided to revolutionize the industry by ignoring all the safety measures. Their master plan focused on tiny purchases right at the checkout. We're talking about becoming the exclusive BNPL provider for Walmart, partnering with DoorDash, so Karen from accounting can finance her Tuesday lunch.
Here's an example of a Chipotle receipt that says that the burrito is like $11.50. You could pay $285.75 on Saturday, $285.75 on Tuesday, and this is within multiple months just to pay off a burrito.
And this is where I want you to really sit with this for a second. They built a multi-billion-dollar company around the premises that people need to go into debt for fast food. Let that marinate while I tell you the really wild part. They use soft credit checks that don't show up on your credit report. So if you got 3 different BNPL loans running and you apply for a 4th, nobody knows about the other 3. It's like financial invisible mode, which sounds cool until you realize it's specifically designed to help people accumulate debt without anyone, including themselves, keep track. It's stealth debt.
And credit cards and buy now, pay later plans, they allow you to spend freely, but with a huge catch. You are going to get spanked if you can't pay these loans back.
They literally gamified hiding how much money you owe. The numbers that made everyone lose their mind. All right, buckle up for this, because this is where the story gets absolutely bonkers. We're about to witness one of the most spectacular valuation roller coaster in startup history. In 2021, Klarna raises $600 million at $45 billion valuation. To put that into perspective, that's more than some actual country's GDP. Everyone was calling them the next PayPal, the future of payments, the company that would make credit card obsolete. 2022, they were not the next PayPal. Just 1 year later, they were trying to raise money at a $6 billion valuation. That's 87% drop. in 12 months.
That's right, 12 months.
That kind of crash that makes GameStop traders go, damn, that's rough. But wait, there's more. First quarter 2025 rolled around and they lost almost $100 million compared to that quarter of 2024 when they lost $47 million. And you're looking at losses that literally doubled while they were supposedly growing their customer base. Now, here's the part that should make every business school professor weep. How do you lose more money when more people are using your services? That's like a restaurant saying, great news, we're serving twice as many customers and losing twice as much money per meal.
I should have never did it. Well, I don't really think I should have never did it. I don't know what I think.
And here's my favorite part of this whole mess. In 2024, during the peak of AI hype, Klarna decided to replace their customer service with AI chatbots. CEO Sebastian was bragging about how this would save them $40 million and talking about how AI would eventually replace all jobs.
AI can already do all of the jobs that we as humans do. It's just a question of how we apply it and use it.
You seem pretty easygoing about AI replacing you, but how do your employees feel?
Well, I think what we've done internally hasn't been reported as widely. Is we stopped hiring about a year ago, so we were 4,500, now we're 3,500.
Fast forward to May 2025, and suddenly he's singing a completely different tone. From a brand perspective, a company's perspective, I just think it's critical that you are clear to your customer that there will always be a human if you want. He admitted that focusing too much on cost cutting led to lower quality, and investing in the quality of human support is the way of the future. Translation: we fired a bunch of people, replacing with robots, our customer got pissed off, and now we're desperately trying to backtrack. Here's the thing everyone should have seen coming. When you lend money to people who can't pay it back so they can buy stuff like takeout food and knockoff sneakers, guess what happens? They don't pay you back. It's basically the mainstream version of payday loans, except somehow with even fewer safeguards. Payday lenders are predatory as hell, but at least they have aggressive collection practices. BNPL companies are doing predatory lending with training wheels. Think about it. If someone defaults on their Chipotle loan, what are you gonna do? Repo the burrito? With a car loan, you can take the car back. With a mortgage, there's a house. With BNPL, for consumables, you've got nothing. 23% of users have 3 or more active BNPL loans at once. 2/3 would have used it for food delivery. 60% think making payments on time helps their credit score. It doesn't. Only 13% understand that BNPL can hurt your credit but never help it. That last stats is the most damning. Only 13% of users actually understand what they're signing up for. These companies are essentially exploiting financial illiteracy, targeting the exact people who can least afford to make financial mistakes.
Stop! If you are gonna use Klarna for DoorDash, delete both. Delete both! That is crazy behavior. That is crazy behavior. You should not pay your Taco Bell order over 8 weeks. Please delete the apps. That is insane! What is this? Ah!
The craziest part, in May 2025, the Trump administration actually made things worse by voiding rules that would have held BNPL companies to the same standard as credit card companies. So now they have even more room to be predatory. But here's the thing, regulatory protection or not, the math doesn't work. You can't build a sustainable business on lending money to people who don't pay you back.
And for those of you that have not been paying your Klarna debt, go do it now. Because tell me why I just saw a video of them filing bankruptcy. We can't lose it. Klarna is like our bestie. We can't lose our bestie.
Klarna filed to go public in March 2025. They then delayed the IPO in April, citing market turbulence from Trump's tariff. But let's be real. When you're losing twice as much money as last year despite having more customers, maybe the problem isn't marketing turbulence. Maybe the problem is that your entire business model is fundamentally broken. This whole thing was predictable from day one. You had a company targeting financially vulnerable people with predatory loans for stuff that they definitely don't need and probably can't afford. The only surprise is that it took this long for everything to fall apart. Now, before I completely bury Klarna, I need to drop a massive plot twist that changes everything. Because while I was building up this whole story, fintech apocalypse narrative, it turns out the real story is way more complicated. And honestly, way more interesting. Remember all those viral TikToks about Klarna going to bankrupt? The breathless YouTube videos with thumbnails showing burning money? Yeah, well, they might have been just a tiny bit premature. You're probably wondering how they went from definitely dying to actually maybe not dying at all. Well, it's a long story. Remember that $99 million loss I mentioned for Q1 2025? Well, it turns out there's more to that story. Klarna said a big chunk of that loss wasn't from their core business imploding. It was from one-time costs related to their now paused IPO plan. Things like shared-based payments to employees, basically expensive accounting stuff that happens when you're preparing to go public. When you strip out those one-time costs, Klarna actually claimed they had an adjustment operating profit for the quarter, which, if true, completely changed the entire narrative from bleeding to money to dealing with expensive paperwork. The credit losses did go up to 70% to $136 million, but here's the thing. Klarna says that's mostly because they're issuing way more loans as they grow. The actual default rate barely budged, going from 0.51 to 0.54. That's not exactly the financial apocalypse some people were predicting. S&P Global, the people whose job is to figure out if a company are about to collapse, reaffirmed Klarna's BBB investment grade credit rating in April 2025. They got around $10 billion in cash reserve, which is a lot of money to have sitting around if you're supposedly going broke. Revenue was up 15% year over year to $700 million. They hit 100 million active users, up 18% from last year. They're still landing major partnership with Walmart, DoorDash, and eBay. None of this screams company about to die. When they paused their IPO plans in April, they said it was because of market volatility, not because they're falling apart. And honestly, given everything happening with the economy, Trump tariffs, waiting for better market conditions actually sounds reasonable. The AI thing might actually be working. Remember how I roasted them for the AI customer service disaster? Well, it sounds like they're finding their footing. Yeah, they cut about 40% of their workforce since 2022, but their revenue per employee has gone up significantly. The CEO admits they had some bumps with customer service and customer experience, but now they're making sure people can always talk to a human if they want to. Maybe firing everyone and replacing them with robots wasn't the complete disaster I thought it was. Though I still think the way they initially handled it was pretty tone deaf. So what's the real story? Look, I'm not about to turn around and say Klarna is some amazing company that revolutionizing finance. The fundamental concern about BNPL targeting financially vulnerable people with predatory products, those are still totally wild, but the Klarna is about to collapse narrative that's been floating around social media that might be overblown. They're closing some smaller offices in Amsterdam, Mannheim, and Columbus as part of cost cutting, but that sounds more like normal business optimization than desperate last-ditch moves. Klarna went from being absurdly overvalued at $45 billion to being a more reasonable value company dealing with real challenges. They're not the fintech darling they once were, but they're also probably not about to disappear tomorrow. The bigger story here might be about how social media can turn quarterly losses and strategic delays into company is dying viral content. Yeah, Klarna has problems. The BNPL model is still sketchy. They've made some questionable decisions and their evaluation cash was real, but there's a difference between struggling with challenges and about to go bankrupt. Sometimes the truth is less dramatic than the story we want to tell. And sometimes a company can be both problematic and financially stable at the same time.